Clash Royale has stood the test of time, remaining an iconic game for many years. And as we approach nearly a decade since its launch, it's pretty clear why it's captured the hearts of millions. One of the reasons for its lasting impact is its unforgettable cards and characters, each bringing unique gameplay and personality to the arena. Among these, the Baby Dragon has been a standout since its release back in 2016, becoming one of the most iconic and beloved cards in the game's history. Today we'll be taking a look at the Baby Dragon, a card which hasn't received much balance changes, if any, for the last 5 years, and we'll be answering the question in the title, why Clash Royale will never nerf Baby Dragon. The story of our Baby Dragon begins on the very first day of Clash Royale's existence, on its soft launch on January 4th. As you might remember, the game was quite different back then. There were no clan wars, no lucky drops, no champions, and not even legendaries. It was Supercell's simple 1v1 multiplayer card game that quickly gained popularity after Clash of Clans. The Baby Dragon was part of the original 42 cards when the game launched on February 1st, 2016. Many of these cards, like goblins, skeletons, bombers, hog rider, and archers, were borrowed directly from Clash of Clans, so it's safe to assume that the Baby Dragon was also transferred from COC to CR. And while that's partially true, it's not the full story, so let me explain. In Clash of Clans, there were no baby dragons, just regular dragons, which were powerful flying splash damage troops for raiding villages. Supercell wanted to include the dragon in Clash Royale as well, but there was one major problem. The dragon was simply too big. Its size and wingspan would have made it overpowered in the game, covering too much area with an enormous range that could easily break the balance. So Supercell had an interesting idea. Why not create a smaller version of the dragon? One that would be compact with smaller wings, and well, that's how the adorable Baby Dragon we know today was born. Interestingly, it wasn't just introduced to Clash Royale, it was later added to Clash of Clans as well. Now, before I dive into its lore, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We are so close to 40k. Seriously, thank you guys for your support. It has been amazing. So, as for his lore, there's this Clash-orama episode titled Bringing Up Baby Dragon, where we see Baby Dragon's little story from the arena. And while it may not be accurate, it is still interesting to watch. Let me sum up the Baby Dragon part for you. It was just another day at the arena, with the blue and red kings battling fiercely against each other. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a small green dragon appeared on the blue king's side. The king was ready to shoot it down, but the princess stopped him. It wasn't an enemy troop, they explained, but a stray, and the dragon was so cute, they wanted to keep it. The king reluctantly agreed. Thus, the Baby Dragon became their pet. And it sure would be cool to have a pet dragon that burps fire. As time passed, the Baby Dragon grew into a full-grown, but still green, dragon. She needed training, so the king taught her basic tricks, how to sit, roll over, and so on. But one day, the dragon laid down, looking unwell, and then boom! A whole bunch of baby dragons appeared. It turned out that the dragon was a female, and she had just given birth to many, many little baby dragons. And that is how the Baby Dragon came to be. A crazy story, but, you know, thought it was worth mentioning. It's cute. Baby Dragon, on launch, had some special stats. Its HP was 1064, he had an area damage of 133, hit speed of 1.8 seconds, resulting in 83 damage per second, and a range of 3 tiles. But ARCTO, you might ask, what makes the Baby Dragon so special with these stats? Well, if you look closely at that HP, combine that splash damage with flight, that might give you an idea as to why. The Baby Dragon was the first and only flying splash damage card when it was released. At the time, there were no other cards like it, and even now, it still kind of stands out as unique. Sure, there was the Wizard, the stronger and more popular splash damage card back then, but he couldn't fly. He just hadn't evolved to that level yet. With its massive HP, the Baby Dragon acted as a flying mini-tank that didn't have many reliable counters. Archers, well, Baby Dragon wiped them out. Minions and Minion Horde, they vanished in an instant, leaving the Baby Dragon with enough HP to press on towards the tower. Even Fireball couldn't deal significant damage or knock it back. In metas full of minions, skeletons, and goblins, the baby dragon was a solid counter. It was also decent at dealing with beefy ground troops like barbarians and knights. While it couldn't fully counter them, it dealt enough damage to make a difference. When it was released in February, the baby dragon's usage rate was already high at 15%. By the end of February, it skyrocketed to an incredible 53%. Largely due to the prevalence of barbarians. And while the wizard also performed well against barbarians and dealt more damage, he was a little too fragile to sustain long fights. Some exciting decks emerged during this time, like the Baby Dragon Prince Control deck. The Baby Dragon cleared the path, while the Prince delivered hard-hitting counter pushes. This deck excelled in defense with guards and Valkyrie and had incredible offensive potential. Tombstone wasn't an issue for this deck, as the Baby Dragon could easily counter spawner cards. The Baby Dragon's ability to handle swarms made it an excellent companion for giants, and later, golems. Giant beatdown decks especially showcased the Baby Dragon's strengths for years, helping players maintain incredible win streaks. We'll dive deeper into those beatdown decks later when they become more prominent in the meta. But the Baby Dragon wasn't without its downsides. It couldn't kite ground troops like the Valkyrie, which also cost 4 elixir. Instead, it was often kited itself by buildings or tanky troops like giants, leaving it vulnerable to minions. Another issue was its attack animation. If its target died mid-animation, it would stop and retarget, often repeating the same problem over and over. This bug was fixed in March, which made the Baby Dragon much more reliable. Despite these quirks, the Baby Dragon wasn't overpowered. It was just a popular and balanced choice. In the March update, Supercell improved it further by ensuring it wouldn't stop its attack if a target died during the animation. They also reduced its sight range from 6 tiles down to 5.5, making it slightly stronger overall. The global launch of Clash Royale and the introduction of legendary cards brought significant challenges for the Baby Dragon. It now had to compete with the Princess, a card with superior splash damage, longer range, and higher utility. The Baby Dragon's usage rate plummeted to 6% by March, a drastic decline that reflected the power shift introduced by legendary cards. By May, things improved slightly. The Princess was nerfed, and the introduction of the Lava Hound gave rise to the Lava Hound Baby Dragon beatdown deck, which performed decently in the meta. Supercell also fixed a range bug for the Baby Dragon, reducing its range from 3.5 tiles to 3. And while this didn't significantly affect its performance, it made kiting the Baby Dragon slightly harder. However, the Baby Dragon's relevance declined in subsequent months. The rise of Zap, Princess, and Golem decks pushed it out of the meta, dropping its usage to a mere 1%. Recognizing this, Supercell buffed the Baby Dragon in August, increasing its attack speed from 1.8 seconds to 1.6, and reducing its first attack delay to 0.3 seconds, down from 0.5. This buff helped it counter swarms more effectively. Unfortunately, the meta again shifted in September with the release of the Mega Minion, one of, if not the strongest card at the time, boasting an 86% usage rate. The Meta Minion's power overshadowed the Baby Dragon, and its release coincided with the introduction of the Inferno Dragon, a flying unit with similar traits, but a focus on high single target damage. October brought better news for the Baby Dragon. The nerf to Inferno Tower boosted Golem decks, and the Baby Dragon became a key component in the now famous Baby Dragon Golem beatdown decks, raising its usage to 28%. These decks remained relevant for years and showcased the Baby Dragon's unique role as a flying splash mini tank. This deck was also used by a player named TMD Yao Yao in King's Cup Finals, which he won beautifully. By November, however, cheaper, cycle-friendly cards gained popularity, and December's release of Elite Barbarians upended the meta, diminishing the Baby Dragon's relevance. The Baby Dragon's first year was a roller coaster, marked by highs and lows that depended heavily on the meta. While some dismissed it as a beginner's card, the stats tell a different story. The Baby Dragon was always valuable, and its decline was more a reflection of shifting metas than its inherent weaknesses. Its unique combination of flying, splash damage, and mini-tank stats ensured it remained a special card, even when outshined by newer alternatives. In 2017, things got a whole lot more spicy and diverse. For starters, Executioner was released and he was really broken. Like, he did things he was not meant to do and was very powerful. Most giants dominated the meta, but Golem was often seen as well, and a new archetype, Logbait, was born, which killed off Graveyard and also elite barbarians. So thank God for that. The Ice Golem also died with a big nerf to his throne. Usage rates for Baby Dragon were doing alright, around 5% for January and February, which was impressive at that time, considering it was dead inside the hardest and most broken meta the game had ever seen. Mega Minion was still a big competition for him because he could have easily been killed for a positive elixir trade. To give the Baby Dragon and some other underused cards a boost, Supercell decided to buff the Baby Dragon. They described it as a fun and iconic card that had fallen out of favor, so they increased its range from 3 tiles up to 3.5. This change made the Baby Dragon much more appealing and was a significant improvement. As a result, its popularity surged to 18%. The February balance changes also affected the usage of other cards. For instance, the Furnace and Fire Spirits saw a decline in popularity. On the other hand, Archers and Ice Wizard became more common, as effective counters to the Baby Dragon. This shift in card usage contributed to one of the most diverse metas the game had ever seen. Giant beatdowns, Golem beatdowns, Logbait and other spellbait decks, Lava Hound strategies, P.E.K.K.A decks in later months, and Hog Rider decks really all thrived during this time. Baby Dragon was really good in tournaments alongside the Mega Minion and Lava Hound. As for the Inferno Dragon, it continued to struggle in the meta due to its numerous counters, much like how Sparky was once nicknamed the Trash Can on Wheels because of her vulnerability. The Inferno Dragon faced some similar issues. While it had immense damage potential, it was easily countered and distracted, making it a risky choice. It wasn't particularly effective in or against beatdown decks, as there was always reliable answers to it. Occasionally, decks featuring both the Baby Dragon and Inferno Dragon appeared. These decks performed decently, but their success largely depended on the meta and the synergy of other cards within the deck. For the most part, the Inferno Dragon was often replaced by more versatile or efficient cards. By April, the Baby Dragon's usage reached 20% among players in the top ladder. However, it's worth noting the stats displayed on screen might show higher percentages, such as 40%. Keep in mind that these figures represent the top 200 ladder players, so when I mention half the value shown, and now you might know why. The Baby Dragon wasn't just a fan favorite in Clash Royale, it also shone brightly in Clash of Clans. So in Clash Royale, popular decks featuring the Baby Dragon included P.E.K.K.A decks, Lava Hound, and of course, Golem decks. In May, a new deck called Splashyard emerged, gaining some widespread popularity. This deck featured the Graveyard, Baby Dragon, Tornado, Bowler, and sometimes the Electro Wizard. Splashyard was exceptionally strong, and it helped solidify the synergy between the Baby Dragon and Tornado. While some players experimented with the Executioner as an alternative, most preferred the Baby Dragon because, as they say, flying beats walking. The Baby Dragon truly excelled during May and June, especially when paired with the Tornado. This combo became so effective that it rivaled the Mega Minion for dominance in the skies, reaching an impressive 30.5% usage rate. Meanwhile, Golem decks featuring the Baby Dragon skyrocketed in popularity after the release of the Night Witch, whose game-breaking presence reshaped the entire meta. Her strength also contributed to Tornado's massive rise in usage, as players used it to control her and her bats. Unfortunately, Tornado's reign could not last forever. It became the second most used card in the game and was subsequently nerfed, which indirectly affected the Baby Dragon and Executioner. Although this was a setback, the Baby Dragon still held its ground in Golem decks, continuing to perform decently. In June, the arrival of the Mega Knight shook the meta, posing new challenges for the Baby Dragon, and despite this, it maintained an impressive 14% usage rate in Golem decks, proving its resilience. However, as August and September rolled around, the Baby Dragon faced a decline. The meta shifted in favor of Ice Golem, Knight, and Mega Minion, while Princess also regained strength. This made the Baby Dragon a lot less impactful, and its usage rate dropped to around 5 to 6.5%. The growing popularity of logbait decks likely contributed to this decline, though it's hard to say for sure. By September and October, the Baby Dragon had largely fallen out of favor, even in Golem beatdown decks. Players gravitated towards alternatives like the Electro Wizard, and interestingly, despite the decline in usage, the Baby Dragon maintained a strong reputation among players. In September, many considered it a great card, even one of the best. Some players called for a buff, but others argued it didn't need any changes, as it was already well-balanced and effective in the right situations. Instead of Baby Dragon, Inferno Dragon was now doing good, great even against Mega Knight and Golem decks as a niche alternative to Baby Dragon and Inferno Tower. Baby Dragon started appearing more and more in Splashyard decks, but quickly lost its purpose because of Lumberjack and Cannon Cart. Logbait was very powerful during this time as well, and in December, Baby Dragon's usage was worse again because of a new spooky Royal Ghost, which completely changed the entire game. And guess who was doing great against the new meta? The Inferno Tower. It literally had a usage rate of around 25%, which, funnily enough, is the highest it's seen at that time. And that is a wrap for 2017. The Baby Dragon truly had an incredible year, filled with highs and lows. Beyond its dominance in Clash Royale, there wasn't much other notable content featuring the Baby Dragon, aside from its appearances in Clash of Clans and the ever-popular How to Draw Baby Dragon tutorials. This speaks volumes about how iconic the Baby Dragon is in both games. Its versatility, charm, and unique role make it a standout card and character, beloved by players across the world. It's truly amazing to see how much of an impact this little flying tank has had, and it's also wild to see how he hasn't gotten that many balance changes over these 2 years. He was actually pretty impressively balanced on release. Anyway, Royal Ghost got nerfed before he was released for everyone, which balanced him and the meta around him, which made it diverse again. Inferno Dragon was also balanced out, but was still better than the Baby Dragon. Literally in January, Mega Knight and Inferno Dragon were the most iconic duo, which serves as a defensive backbone in the most popular spell bait deck in the top ladder. At the start of the year, Baby Dragon's usage wasn't even 10%. It was occasionally going up and down, and in May, it eventually reached 14%. But at this time, Baby Dragon did have some problems with the Rascals. He was easily countered by the Rascal Girls thanks to the Rascal Boy, but the card was bad, so it wasn't a real problem to Baby Dragon players. There were just some balance changes that kept killing off the Baby Dragon. For example, Tornado again got nerfed and took Baby Dragon down with it. Also, Dark Prince was really powerful and one of the best cards. Baby Dragon just happened to be in a difficult meta yet again. He stuck with the Golem beatdown decks for a long while, actually, well, not a while, but for the whole year. He wasn't seen in many decks aside from that Golem beatdown deck in the top ladder though. However, his stats are entirely different from mid and low ladders. In low ladder, he's basically still the best card, and in mid ladder, he's decent and seeing decent plays, which is expected. In the August balance update, Supercell decreased the Baby Dragon's attack time interval to 1.5 seconds from 1.6, but allowed it to be knocked back by spells like Fireball, which didn't really help out that much. But the attack speed was, still something. Nothing else happened to the Baby Dragon after that. He was kinda just forgotten, but not really. In December, Ram Rider was released, and she was a very strong card. Surprisingly, Baby Dragon found its place in Ram Rider decks, and it helped the popularity a lot. From very low numbers, it was now at 24% usage rate for December. The only interesting thing that happened this year was in October to November when Supercell released Baby Dragon's other brother, the Electro Dragon, which was an interesting and amazing card with the new chain mechanic. 2019 was a very interesting and diverse year for the Baby Dragon. He was seen in many decks now, like the Ram Rider we already mentioned, Lava Loon, Ice Wizard Graveyard Control, Bowler Graveyard, Lava Hound Miner, and many more. Splashyard also became very popular among players, and it was actually pretty great. In January, he was able to maintain a 24% usage rate, which only kept increasing, and in April, it was up to 27%. So, let's talk about the Ram Rider that got Baby Dragon back up on the board yet again. This deck included the Ram Rider, P.E.K.K.A, Poison, Electro Wizard, and the Baby Dragon, alongside the Lumberjack for defense and Rage. Ram Rider and the Baby Dragon worked really well to fend off any buff cards from the Ram Rider. Then there was the classic decks like Lava Hound Miner, Ice Wizard Graveyard, aka Splashyard, etc. But the deck that outshined the most and was considered #1 in the entire game was this Elixir Golem deck. Just by Elixir Golem, you already know it's gonna be broken. This was just one of the Night Witch Golem decks which dominated the entire meta, and there was the Baby Dragon and Tornado inside of it. You know this deck is gonna play well already. In 2020, they introduced the Battle Healer, and that made this deck really broken. But despite this powerful deck, the community favorite and most popular was always the Splashyard, and it'll always be that way. Splashyard was such a great deck that Surgical Goblin, Clash Royale, one of Clash Royale's best players, used it in Clash Royale League Tournament Finals and won. Supercell, seeing Baby Dragon doing too great, they knew they had to nerf it somehow. So in November, they nerfed its HP by 4%. And honestly, it didn't really affect it that much. It was still massively used. Night Witch and the Golem decks were still popular and very powerful, and so the Baby Dragon was too. And in December, its usage rate sat at 35%, which is pretty crazy. However, next year we'll see something more interesting happen to the game. But first, about the usage rates. It was going up, and up in April, Baby Dragon actually reached #1 in the entire game by usage, which is utterly insane. Baby Dragon was acting a little naughty, so on May 5th balance update, they decreased the Baby Dragon's hit points by 6.5%, which was, an ouch, but he managed to get through it just fine. New decks started appearing like Elixir Golem Battle Healer with the Baby Dragon, Clone Golem decks because Clone is broken and why not, and also 3 dragons together because, funny haha, I dropped 3 dragons on your towers, what are you going to do? But why stop at 3 when you can have 4? Yes, 4 dragons! In June, Supercell released a new card called the Skeletal Dragons. And these dragons were actually the opposite of the Baby Dragon. They had lower HP, but they did massive damage. Well, kind of. They were meant to be used more offensively than as a tank like the Baby Dragon, and when in good decks, they packed a punch. Of course, then there was a discussion. Baby Dragon or Skeleton Dragons? To which I say, please stop comparing apples to oranges. They're just 2 different things. As we said above, Baby Dragon is a tank and Skeletal Dragons are a DPS card. 2 completely different rules. When Firecracker was also introduced, she could not compete with the Baby Dragon because, well, she serves a different purpose. Annoyance. The Baby Dragon during this time was still used in many different decks and archetypes, like the ones we listed above, and it was able to withstand the changing metas. For August, it had an 18% usage rate, which managed to go up even more, and in December, finally, he had a usage rate of 21%. And that wraps up 2020. There really wasn't much going on for the Baby Dragon that year, with its last balance change leaving it in a stable position. There wasn't really anything game-changing related to the Baby Dragon. It just works well in a lot of scenarios. The next following years will be short compared to the last ones, so behold, we enter 2021, the year of the Champions Update. But before that monumental change, the Baby Dragon was holding its own, with its usage rate still above its historical average at around 20%. The release of the Mother Witch also worked in its favor, helping it remain a staple in the meta. By June, the Baby Dragon experienced a slight dip in usage due to some meta shifts, but managed to stay relevant. New decks emerged, including the powerful Electro Giant or E-Giant strategies, such as E-Giant Prince and E-Giant E-Barbs. The resurgence of E-Barbs and Royal Giant brought a touch of nostalgia from 2016 and also worked in favor of the Baby Dragon, as it effectively countered those cards. The deck highlight of 2021 undoubtedly goes to a refined and dominating Golem deck. Night Witch Golem Beatdown. With the Night Witch returning to its prominence, this deck streamlined its way to the top, becoming the #1 deck in the world at the time. Of course, the classic Splashyard deck remained relevant as always, maintaining its status as a staple for the Baby Dragon enthusiasts. Another noteworthy moment came during the 2021 Clash Royale League Tournament Finals, where Mugi, one of the best players in the game, used a Baby Dragon deck to defeat Muhammad Light, widely regarded as the greatest Clash Royale player ever. This legendary battle cemented the Baby Dragon's place in Clash Royale's history, and on top of that, Mugi got to take home a nice 200k bonus. This deck was no joke, and it provided great value in the next following months. As for the Champions Update, Well, surprisingly, it didn't really affect the baby dragon. While all the champions themselves revolutionized the game and the meta, Golem decks remained consistent and strong. The Archer Queen did pose some challenges to the baby dragon, but after receiving a balancing nerf in November, her impact waned, allowing the baby dragon to continue thriving. By December, the baby dragon boasted an impressive 13% usage rate, proving its staying power yet again. Jumping to 2022 quickly, the usage rates were still high, but they started to slowly come down as new cards and new metas were created and used. So at the start of the year until the end of summer, those usage rates sat at around 13 to 15%. The same decks were trending, the only difference being Splashyard deck now contained the Skeleton King instead of the Graveyard. Sometimes they were both. But everything got messed up in October and November, the horrifying time when the Phoenix and the Monk champion were released, and they completely broke the meta. Quite literally, they killed off many cards and many decks, and even champions. Not even the baby dragon had a chance to survive. Thankfully, these two cards got hit with the nerf brick in December, and cards finally got to breathe some fresh air again. Baby Dragon had bounced back to 7% by the end of that year. 2023 was a relatively light year for the Baby Dragon. Several new cards were introduced, and the evolution update brought some fresh strategies and decks to the game. Despite these changes, the Baby Dragon kind of remained a staple in its classic Splashyard and Golem decks, which still delivered strong performances when played skillfully. Oh, and by played skillfully, I mean strategies that require precise timing and good decision making. Over time, the Baby Dragon's win rates began to decline, reflecting its increasing reliance on player skill. And it kind of makes sense, as the ever-growing roster of cards includes new strategies that demand adaptability and expertise to counter effectively. As a result, the Baby Dragon's high skill ceiling discouraged more casual use. After all, not everyone has the experience or finesse to make the most use of it. No offense, of course, I'm literally one of those people. Throughout the year, the Baby Dragon's usage rate hovered around 5 to 8%. Each month, not particularly remarkable, but steady. In June, Supercell considered reworking the Baby Dragon to encourage more play. However, this plan was scrapped after feedback from the community, which largely agreed that the Baby Dragon was already balanced and didn't need any changes. Many didn't really like this decision because they thought that Baby Dragon needed something new, because the card literally had the same stats from 2020. But really, it's from around 2018 if we don't count those HP nerfs. Many people wanted the Baby Dragon to be good again by buffing its stats, but the greater masses considered him to be balanced and a decent card. Supercell also considered decreasing the Baby Dragon's sight range from 5.5 tiles down to 5, but this change was pulled back at the last minute. While it might seem like a nerf, this adjustment could have actually benefited the Baby Dragon by making it harder to kite effectively, but hey, we never got it. To be more accurate, while he isn't the best competitive card for the top ladder, he is still a pain in the butt to deal with in lower ladders. And he's really decent in mid ladder where there aren't many cards to counter him. And just like that, we arrive in 2024. And I'm gonna level with you here. There was nothing new with the Baby Dragon at all, and his usage rate and win rate just continued to go more and more downhill. In January up until April, Little Prince was breaking the entire game, and if you happen to know it, he completely counters the Baby Dragon. And you know how many people used the Little Prince? You know, pretty small number at 80% of the entire community. Yeah. In August, he literally died, 1% with an 18% win rate. In October, Goblinstein Champion got released, and would you look at that? It also completely counters the Baby Dragon, and the entire community used it everywhere. So he really didn't get a chance to shine this year either. His usage rates as of writing this in December of 2024 is 1% with a 30% win rate. It's better, but, you know, not good. By the way, shout out to this video coming out in 2025. Happy New Year. The entire community fell to believe that Supercell completely forgot about the Baby Dragon in an effort to improve the game and make it more enjoyable for people. And it's kind of true, but also not entirely. First, let's explore why many players believe Supercell has forgotten about the Baby Dragon. One key reason is the lack of balance changes, but then there's the issue of evolutions. Take evolutions, for example. Nearly every original card from 2016 has received one. Even the Electro Dragon got an evolution this year, yet the Baby Dragon didn't? it really just doesn't make sense. Baby Dragon needs an evolution, especially considering its current state. There really isn't an argument against this. Players universally want to see something new for the Baby Dragon. It's one of the most iconic cards in Clash Royale. So why hasn't Supercell done it yet? Surely they would have at least considered it by now, or, would they? It is Supercell after all. One theory is that they're holding back due to community feedback. Many players feel like the Baby Dragon is already balanced and fine as is. When a rework was proposed last year, the community overwhelmingly voted against it, so maybe Supercell's sticking with the status quo. But of course, all of this is just speculation. The Baby Dragon isn't overpowered, nor is it weak. It is a decent card, though it often depends on the meta. Its unique flying splash tank style helped it in its early years, and its status as a fan-favorite character likely deterred Supercell from making major changes. When it had a 20% plus usage rate, it was clearly in a great spot. But if Supercell thinks the Baby Dragon's fine, then why haven't they given it an evolution? Now, speaking of speculation, let's imagine the Baby Dragon finally gets an evolution. What could it possibly be? What should it do? There are already several great ideas floating around, so let us dive into them. Number 1, fire or poison damage. This is perhaps the most realistic option. So Baby Dragon's fiery attacks could leave behind a lingering burn effect or some poison damage on troops. It makes sense. Its fiery breath should have some lasting impact. This evolution would be unique and could add a new layer of strategy, especially in Golem or Splashyard decks. Think of it as a graveyard plus poison combo, but condensed into a single 4 elixir card. It would be amazing. Number 2 could be a death bomb. Imagine the Baby Dragon dropping a bomb upon its death, similar to the balloon or giant skeleton. This idea has been circulating for years, and it'd undeniably be one of the coolest effects in the game. While that might sound a little overpowered, careful balancing could make it viable. Number 3, Baby Dragon Pups. This idea draws inspiration from the Lava Hound. Upon death, the Baby Dragon could spawn smaller pups that deal minor damage. Not only would this be a fun mechanic, but it would also be a nice little callback to that Clash-orama lore. Number 4, evolution through kills. So how about a system where the Baby Dragon evolves as it defeats enemy troops? It could grow through 3 stages: baby, adolescent, and adult dragon. Each stage could bring improved stats, making it a unique card that rewards skilled play. And finally, number 5, Enrage mechanic. Borrowed from Clash of Clans, this evolution could enrage the Baby Dragon when all nearby allies die, boosting its attack speed or damage. This mechanic would add a fresh layer of strategy to deck building and gameplay. Of all these ideas, the fire poison damage seems the most practical and balanced. It would instantly make the Baby Dragon more viable and open up some creative synergies in many decks, especially those using poison. As a side note, what if Supercell added the classic Clash of Clans dragon to the game? Initially, this was their plan before creating the Baby Dragon. While adding the full-grown adult dragon might overshadow the Baby Dragon, an interesting workaround could be to integrate both through a unique evolution mechanic, as we mentioned earlier. The Baby Dragon's potential for fresh updates is immense. Whether it's through a new mechanic, evolution, or some creative rework, the possibilities are honestly endless. With the right changes, it could easily regain its status as a top-tier card and continue to be a beloved part of Clash Royale for years to come. Baby Dragon is a single card I believe will never get a nerf for the next few years and will never actually die. Even if the usage rates are low, he will never be forgotten by the player base. But you know what other card will never be forgotten? One of the deadliest in Clash Royale history, the P.E.K.K.A. Go check out its history now. It's one of the most insane stories of any card. I'll see you there.